The colony ship Endurance was dying. Everyone on board knew it. The engines had failed 3 days ago, and now the massive vessel drifted through empty space like a leaf floating on a dark river. Inside, 2,000 humans waited and hoped and prayed that someone would find them before their air ran out. Dr. David Kim stood at the observation window and watched the stars. He was a xenobiologist, a man who studied alien life forms. He had spent 20 years learning about creatures from other worlds. But right now, none of that knowledge could help him. Right now, he was just a father worried about his daughter. Lily was only 5 years old. She had brown eyes and black hair that she always wore in 2 small braids. She was sleeping in the corner of the observation deck, curled up on a blanket that David had brought from their quarters. Next to her, watching everything with small, angry eyes, was Sergeant. Sergeant was a honey badger. He was not supposed to be on the ship. The honey badger had been part of Earth's genetic preservation program. Scientists had collected animals from all over the planet and stored them on colony ships. Just in case something bad happened to Earth, Sergeant was supposed to stay in a special container in the cargo hold, sleeping in a frozen state until they reached their new home. But Sergeant had other plans. Somehow, the honey badger had escaped from his container. Nobody knew how. The locks were supposed to be unbreakable. The security systems were supposed to be perfect. But one morning, a cargo worker had opened the hold and found Sergeant sitting on top of a food crate, eating a stolen protein bar and looking at him with complete disrespect. They tried to catch him. They really tried. But honey badgers are not easy to catch. They are strong for their size. They are fast. They are mean. And most importantly, they do not care about anything. Fear is not a word that exists in a honey badger's mind. After 3 weeks of failed attempts, the captain made a decision. The honey badger could stay free. It was easier than losing more crew members to bite wounds. That was when Lily found him. David remembered that day clearly. His daughter had wandered into the cargo hold looking for her lost toy. She found Sergeant instead. The honey badger was eating something that might have been a rat or might have been someone's lunch. Lily had walked right up to him and sat down. "Hello," she had said. "I'm Lily. Do you want to be friends?" David had nearly had a heart attack when he found them. His tiny daughter sitting next to one of Earth's most aggressive animals. He had rushed forward to grab her, certain that the honey badger would attack, but Sergeant had simply looked at him. Those small dark eyes had studied David for a long moment. Then the honey badger had moved closer to Lily and continued eating. From that day forward, Sergeant belonged to Lily, or perhaps Lily belonged to Sergeant. It was hard to tell. The honey badger followed her everywhere. He slept outside her door. He growled at anyone who came too close to her. He even let her pet him, which was something he had never allowed anyone else to do. The ship's doctor said it was impossible. Honey badgers did not form bonds with humans. They did not protect children. They did not act like pets. But Sergeant did not care about what was supposed to be impossible. He had decided that Lily was his, and that was the end of the discussion. Now, as the Endurance drifted through the darkness, David was grateful for the strange friendship. Lily was scared. All the children were scared. But Lily had Sergeant, and somehow that made her feel safe. "David." A voice came from behind him. It was Captain Susan Park, a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She walked over to stand next to him at the window. "The distress beacon is working. Someone will find us." "I know," David said. But he did not feel hopeful. Space was very big. Ships went missing all the time. Sometimes they were found. Sometimes they were not. "How is Lily?" the captain asked. David looked back at his sleeping daughter. Sergeant was curled up next to her now, his small body pressed against her side. Even in sleep, the honey badger looked angry. She's okay, David said. Sergeant is taking care of her. Captain Park smiled a little. That animal is the strangest thing I have ever seen. And I have seen a lot of strange things. He loves her, David said. I don't know why. I don't know how. But he loves her. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Then, suddenly, a light appeared on the captain's communication device. She looked at it, and her face changed. Someone answered the beacon, she said. Her voice was strange. Not happy. Not relieved. Something else. That's good, David said. Right? Captain Park did not answer. She was reading the message on her device, and her face was getting paler with every second. Captain? David felt fear growing in his chest. Who answered? She looked at him. Her eyes were full of something that David did not want to see. It was the look of a person who had just received very bad news. The Dominion, she said quietly. It's the Dominion. David felt his blood turn cold. Everyone knew about the Dominion. Everyone knew about the Wrath Collective that controlled it. They were conquerors. They were killers. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not need. How long? David asked. His voice was barely a whisper. 6 hours, Captain Park said. Maybe less. David looked at his daughter. She was still sleeping peacefully, her small hand resting on Sergeant's fur. The honey badger's eyes were open now, watching David with that same angry look he always had. We have to hide her, David said. We have to hide all the children. There's nowhere to hide, Captain Park said. The Wrath will search every corner of this ship. They always do. David closed his eyes. He thought about all the stories he had heard about the Dominion. The destroyed colonies. The missing ships. The people who were taken and never seen again. When he opened his eyes, Sergeant was looking at him. The honey badger did not understand human language. He did not know what the Dominion was. He did not know that danger was coming. But somehow, in that moment, David felt like the animal was trying to tell him something. Those small dark eyes seemed to say, I will protect her. No matter what comes, I will protect her. David knelt down next to his daughter and placed his hand on her head. I know you will, he whispered to the honey badger. I know you will. 6 hours. That was all the time they had left. 6 hours until the monsters arrived. Sergeant closed his eyes and went back to sleep. But even in sleep, his body was tense, ready to fight, ready to protect. He did not know what was coming, but he would be ready for it. He was a honey badger. Being ready for a fight was what he did best. The Dominion fleet came out of hyperspace like a pack of wolves surrounding a wounded deer. 12 warships, each one bigger than the Endurance, each one covered in weapons and armor. They moved into position around the colony ship, blocking every possible escape route. Not that escape was possible. The Endurance could not move. Its engines were dead. Its weapons were offline. It was nothing more than a metal box floating in the void, full of soft, helpless humans. Commander Thax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable, and watched the human vessel on his display screen. He was a Wrath, one of the warrior species that controlled the Dominion. He stood 8 feet tall. He had 4 arms, each one ending in claws that could tear through steel. His skin was covered in scales that glowed with a soft blue light. His eyes were yellow and cold, like the eyes of a snake. Thax had been a warrior for 200 years. He had conquered 17 worlds. He had killed thousands of enemies with his own hands. He was not afraid of anything, but he was careful about humans. The Dominion had encountered humans twice before. Both times had been difficult. Humans were not strong like the Wrath. They were not fast like the Wrath. They did not have claws or scales or 4 arms. By all logic, they should have been easy to defeat. But humans did not follow logic. They fought when they should have surrendered. They survived when they should have died. They found ways to win when winning should have been impossible. The Dominion had lost many warriors learning this lesson. Still, Thax was not worried about this ship. It was damaged and defenseless. The humans inside were civilians, not soldiers. There'd be no fight today. Only collection. Prepare boarding parties, Thax ordered. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. Take specimens for the breeding pens. Kill any who resist, but try not to kill too many. Healthy humans are valuable. His officers nodded and went to carry out his orders. Thax watched them go, then turned back to the display screen. The human ship looked so small and fragile. It was almost sad. The first wave of Wrath warriors breached the Endurance through the cargo bay. There were 20 of them, all wearing combat armor and carrying plasma rifles. They moved through the ship with practiced efficiency, their claws clicking against the metal floor, their yellow eyes scanning every shadow. They found the humans gathered in the main atrium. It was the largest open space on the ship, and the colonists had gathered there to wait together. There were old people and young people, men and women, children and babies. They huddled together like sheep, their faces full of fear. The Wrath warriors spread out around the room. One of them, a squad leader named Crix, stepped forward to address the humans. "You belong to the Dominion now," Crix announced. His translator device turned his words into human language. "Do not resist. Resistance means death. Obey, and some of you may live." None of the humans moved. They were too scared. Some of the children were crying. Some of the adults were praying. A few were holding each other, saying goodbye. Crix felt pleased. This was going to be easy. No fighting. No problems. Just collect the humans and return to the fleet. Simple. Then one of his warriors called out from the corner of the room. "Squad leader? There is something here." Crix walked over to see what his warrior had found. In the corner of the atrium, away from the other humans, a small child was sleeping on a blanket. She had dark hair and 2 braids. Her eyes were closed. She was completely unaware of what was happening around her. Next to her was a small animal. Crix had never seen anything like it. The creature was about the size of a Wrath infant. It had thick gray and white fur. It had small round ears. It had tiny dark eyes that were looking at Crix with an expression that the Wrath warrior could not understand. It looked almost like anger. But that was impossible. No creature that small would feel anger toward a Wrath warrior. That would be insane. "What is it?" Crix asked. The warrior next to him checked his scanner. "Earth creature. Species designation: honey badger. Classified as non-dangerous. Small predator. Eats insects and small animals." Crix relaxed. A small predator. Nothing to worry about. He reached down to grab the sleeping child. The honey badger moved. It happened so fast that Crix did not even see it. One moment, the creature was sitting still. The next moment, it was attached to his face. Claws dug into the soft tissue around his eyes. Teeth bit into his nose. A sound came from the animal's throat, something between a growl and a scream, like a demon had crawled up from hell and was trying to eat his head. Crix screamed. He grabbed at the creature with all 4 hands, but it was too fast, too slippery. It twisted and bit and clawed, always finding new places to attack. Blood ran down Crix's face. He could not see. He could not breathe. He could only feel pain and fury and the teeth of this tiny monster. Finally, Crix managed to grab the creature and throw it across the room. It hit the wall hard and fell to the floor. Crix stood there, gasping, blood pouring from his ruined face. The honey badger got up. It shook itself once, like it was shaking off water. Then it looked at Crix with those small, dark eyes. There was no fear in them. No pain, no hesitation, only pure absolute rage. The creature charged. This time, it went for Crix's legs. It bit through the weak point in his armor, sinking its teeth into his ankle. Crix fell to the ground, screaming again. The other warriors rushed to help him, but the honey badger was already moving, attacking anyone who came close. One warrior lost a finger. Another had his arm torn open. A third was bitten on the throat and fell back, choking on his own blood. Through it all, the small child continued to sleep. Plasma fire filled the room as the warriors tried to shoot the creature. But the honey badger was too fast, too unpredictable. It dodged between their legs, used their bodies as shields. Attacked from angles they did not expect. After what felt like hours, but was only minutes, the Wrath warriors retreated. They ran from the room like scared children, leaving their wounded behind. The honey badger did not chase them. It walked back to the sleeping child and sat down in front of her. It licked the alien blood from its fur. Then it looked at the doorway and waited. It was ready for them to come back. It hoped they would come back. In the atrium, 2,000 humans stared at the small creature that had just defeated 8 Wrath warriors. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just watched as the honey badger settled into position, its eyes fixed on the door, its body ready for the next fight. On her blanket, Lily continued to sleep. She did not know that anything had happened. She was dreaming about flowers and sunshine and playing in the grass. Sergeant sat beside her and guarded her dreams. He did not know that he had just started a legend. He did not know that this moment would be remembered for thousands of years. He did not care about any of that. He only cared about one thing: the small human behind him. Nothing would touch her. Nothing. The wounded Wrath warriors stumbled back to the cargo bay where their shuttle was waiting. They were bleeding from dozens of wounds. One of them could not walk and had to be carried by the others. Squad leader Crix was blind in both eyes, his face a ruin of torn flesh and dried blood. The shuttle pilot saw them coming and opened the door. His yellow eyes went wide when he saw the state of his comrades. "What happened?" he asked. "Did the humans have weapons? Did they fight back?" "Not the humans," one of the warriors gasped. He was holding his throat where the honey badger had bitten him. An animal. A small earth animal. The pilot did not understand. A small animal did this? To 8 Wrath warriors? It would not stop, another warrior said. His voice was shaking. "We hit it. We shot at it. We threw it against the wall. But it would not stop. It kept attacking. It kept coming back. It was like fighting a demon." The pilot helped them into the shuttle and sent an emergency message to the inevitable. Within minutes, Commander Thax was watching the video feed from the warriors' helmet cameras. He watched the honey badger attack Crix. He watched it dodge plasma fire. He watched it bite and claw and fight with a fury that made no sense for a creature of its size. He watched 8 of his best warriors run away from something that weighed less than a human child. When the video ended, Thax sat in silence for a long time. "Show me the current feed from the atrium," he finally said. The screen changed to a live image. The human colonists were still gathered in the room, but now they had moved away from the corner where the child slept. They were giving the honey badger space. They understood something that the Wrath did not. The honey badger was still sitting in front of the sleeping girl. Its fur was matted with alien blood. Its eyes were fixed on the doorway. It did not move. It did not blink. It just waited. Thax had studied Earth's animals. The Dominion always studied the wildlife of planets they planned to conquer. He knew about the honey badger. He knew its reputation. Earth scientists called it the most fearless animal on the planet. It attacked lions. It ate venomous snakes. It fought creatures 10 times its size and refused to back down. He had thought these reports were exaggerations. Primitive humans making up stories about their animals. Now he knew better. Commander. His tactical officer approached carefully. What are your orders? Should we send more warriors? Thax looked at the screen. The honey badger looked back. Even through the camera, even across the distance between the ships, Thax felt like the creature could see him. Like it was challenging him. Our warriors refused to re-enter that section, the tactical officer continued. They say the creature is cursed. They say it cannot be killed. It can be killed, Thax said. Everything can be killed. Then what do we do? Thax thought about it. He could send 50 warriors. 100. He could fill that room with soldiers and overwhelm the creature through sheer numbers. Eventually, someone would get a clean shot. Eventually, the honey badger would die. But how many warriors would he lose first? 10? 20? More? And what would happen when word spread? The Dominion ruled through fear. Other species obeyed them because they were afraid. If the Vrath showed weakness, if they showed that they could be hurt by a tiny earth animal, that fear would fade. But it was worse than that. If the Vrath killed the honey badger, they would probably kill the child too. The creature was standing right next to her. Any weapon powerful enough to guarantee the animal's death would certainly harm the small human sleeping behind it. And if the Dominion killed a human child while she slept, protected by her loyal guardian, what would happen then? Thax knew the answer. The story would spread. Humans would hear it. And humans, with their strange sense of honor and their need for revenge, would never forget. The Dominion had spent centuries building their reputation. They were the conquerors. They were the monsters in the dark. Other species told their children stories about the wrath to make them behave. But humans told different stories. They told stories about creatures like this honey badger. Small things that stood against giants. Weak things that refused to surrender. Things that fought, not because they could win, but because fighting was all they knew how to do. If the Dominion killed this child and her guardian, those stories would change. The Vrath would no longer be the monsters. They would be the villains who murdered an innocent child while she slept under the protection of her faithful companion. Humans would never forgive that. Humans would never forget. Thax made his decision. Pull back, he ordered. All warriors returned to the fleet. The tactical officer stared at him. Commander? We are leaving? Yes, but the humans, the specimens, the breeding program. Thax turned to look at his officer. His yellow eyes were hard and cold. There are other human ships, other colonies, other places to find specimens. This ship is not worth the cost. The tactical officer wanted to argue. Thax could see it in his face, but he was smart enough to stay silent. Make a note in our database, Thax continued. Earth creature, designated honey badger. Extreme threat level. Do not approach. Do not engage. Avoid at all costs. Yes, Commander. Thax looked at the screen one more time. The honey badger had not moved. It was still watching the door, still waiting for enemies that would not come. Behind it, the little girl was waking up. Thax watched as she opened her eyes and yawned. She looked around the room and saw all the people staring at her. She did not understand why. She rubbed her eyes and reached out to pet the honey badger. The creature turned to look at her. Its fierce expression softened, just a little. It allowed her small hand to touch its bloody fur. It made a sound that might have been a purr. Then it turned back to watch the door again. We leave in 1 hour, Thax said. Full retreat. No exceptions. He walked off the bridge without looking back. His officers exchanged confused glances, but none of them dared to question him. On the Endurance, Lily picked up Sergeant and hugged him close to her chest. "You're all dirty," she told the honey badger. "Did you find something to eat?" "Daddy says you shouldn't eat things without asking." Sergeant looked at her with his dark little eyes. He did not understand her words, but he understood her voice, her smell, her warmth. She was his. He was hers. That was all that mattered. "I had a nice dream," Lily continued. She was talking to Sergeant like he was a person, the way she always did. "There were butterflies, and a big garden, and you were there too. You were being nice to the butterflies." Sergeant had never been nice to anything in his life. He did not plan to start now, but for this small human, he would pretend. For her, he would do anything. The Wrath Warriors retreated to their shuttle. The shuttle returned to the inevitable. The Dominion fleet powered up their engines and prepared to leave Dot in the atrium of the Endurance. 2,000 humans watched the alien ships fly away. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. They were too confused, too stunned by what had happened. Dr. David Kim walked over to his daughter and knelt down beside her. "Hey, sweetheart," he said. His voice was shaking. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay, Daddy." Lily smiled at him. "Sergeant kept me safe while I was sleeping." David looked at the honey badger. The creature looked back at him with that same expression it always had. Annoyed, impatient, ready for a fight. "Yes," David said softly. "Yes, he did." He reached out and carefully patted Sergeant's head. The honey badger allowed it. "Just this once." "Good boy," David whispered. "Good boy." Outside, the Dominion fleet jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. They did not come back. News travels fast in space. Faster than ships. Faster than light. Within hours of the Dominion fleet's retreat, the story had already begun to spread. It started with the Wrath Warriors themselves. They could not keep quiet about what had happened. The shame was too great, and the fear was too fresh. They whispered to their friends. Their friends whispered to others. Soon, every Wrath in the sector knew that 8 warriors had been defeated by a single Earth creature. But the Wrath were not the only ones who heard the story. The Dominion controlled hundreds of species. Most of them were slaves, forced to serve the Wrath through fear and violence. They had no hope of freedom. They had no chance of resistance. The Dominion was too strong, too powerful, too cruel. Until now, the slaves heard the whispers. They heard about the tiny animal that had refused to surrender. They heard about the child who slept peacefully while her guardian fought off monsters. They heard about the mighty Wrath running away from something that weighed less than 10 pounds. And for the first time in generations, they began to hope. On a mining colony in the Outer Rim, a group of enslaved workers gathered in secret. They were from a species called the Telani, small blue-skinned creatures who had been conquered by the Dominion 2 centuries ago. They had long forgotten what freedom felt like. "Is it true?" one of them asked. "Did this really happen?" "It is true," another answered. He had access to the Dominion communication network. He had seen the official reports. The Wrath sent a fleet to capture a human ship. They'd found an animal guarding a child. The animal attacked them. They retreated. One animal? The first Telani could not believe it. Against the Wrath? One animal. A honey badger. From Earth. The Telani was silent for a moment. Then, one of them, an old female who had lived under Dominion rule her entire life, began to laugh. "One small creature," she said. "That is all it took. One small creature that refused to be afraid." "What does it mean?" a young Telani asked. The old female looked at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "It means the Wrath can be beaten. It means they are not invincible. It means there is hope." Similar conversations happened across the Dominion. On slave ships and prison planets, in work camps and breeding facilities, The conquered peoples whispered about the honey badger. They did not know what it looked like. They did not know anything about Earth or humans. But they knew one thing. Something small had stood against something big. And the big thing had lost. Meanwhile, on the Endurance, the human colonists were trying to understand what had happened. Captain Susan Park called a meeting in the atrium. Everyone gathered, still shaken from the encounter with the Wrath. In the corner, Lily was playing with Sergeant, trying to clean the dried alien blood from his fur. The honey badger tolerated her attention with his usual grumpy expression. "I have contacted Earth," Captain Park announced. A rescue ship is on its way. They should arrive within 24 hours. The colonists cheered. Some of them cried with relief. After days of fear and uncertainty, help was finally coming. "But there is something else," the captain continued. "I have also reported what happened here. The encounter with the Dominion. The attack. And the way it ended." She looked at Lily and Sergeant. "Earth Command wants to know everything about that animal. They want to understand why the Wrath retreated. They want to know why a honey badger was able to do what no weapon or soldier could do." Dr. David Kim stepped forward. "With respect, Captain, I do not think we need to study Sergeant. I think we already know why he did what he did." "Explain," the captain said. David looked at his daughter. She was hugging Sergeant now, whispering something in his ear. The honey badger's eyes were half closed, relaxed for the first time since the attack. "Honey badgers are fearless," David said. "That is not an exaggeration. It is a biological fact. Their brains do not process fear the way other animals do. They will attack anything that threatens them, regardless of size or danger. Lions, elephants, crocodiles. It does not matter. A honey badger will fight anything." "But why did it protect Lily?" someone asked. David smiled. "Because she is his. Honey badgers are solitary animals. They do not form bonds. They do not join groups. But sometimes, very rarely, they decide that something belongs to them. And when that happens, they will protect it with everything they have." He walked over to his daughter and knelt down beside her. Sergeant decided that Lily was his. David continued. "I do not know why. I do not know how. But from the moment they met, he claimed her as his own. And when the Wrath tried to take her, Sergeant did what any honey badger would do. He fought. He fought 8 Wrath warriors," Captain Park said. "He injured all of them. He blinded one. And he did not stop until they retreated. He would have fought 100, David said. 1,000. It would not have mattered. In Sergeant's mind, there was only one thing that mattered: protecting Lily. Everything else was just an obstacle to be destroyed." The colonists looked at the honey badger with new eyes. The creature that had seemed so small and strange now seemed like something else entirely. A guardian. A protector. A warrior who knew no fear and accepted no defeat. "The Wrath rule through terror," Captain Park said slowly. "They make other species afraid. That is how they control them. But you cannot make a honey badger afraid. The emotion does not exist in their minds." "Exactly," David said. The Wrath had no power over Sergeant. Their size did not scare him. Their weapons did not scare him. Their reputation did not scare him. He saw them as enemies, and he attacked. Simple as that. "Simple," the captain repeated. She almost laughed. "A small animal from Earth just changed the entire balance of power in this sector, and you call it simple." "It is simple," David said. "That is what makes it so effective. No strategy. No planning. No hesitation. Just pure, absolute refusal to back down." Captain Park shook her head in wonder. "Earth Command is going to have a lot of questions about honey badgers." "Let them ask," David said. "But I think the answer is already clear. Humans are not the only dangerous thing from Earth. Our whole planet is full of creatures that do not know how to surrender. Creatures that fight against impossible odds. Creatures that would rather die than give up. He picked up Lily, and Sergeant immediately climbed onto his shoulder. The Wrath thought they were the predators, David said. They thought we were the prey. But they forgot something important. Humans evolved on a planet full of honey badgers. We have been living alongside these creatures for thousands of years. Maybe some of their spirit rubbed off on us. The colonists thought about that. They thought about Earth and all its dangerous animals. The lions and tigers and bears. The sharks and crocodiles and venomous snakes. The tiny spiders and scorpions that could kill with a single bite. And the honey badgers. The fearless, furious, unstoppable honey badgers. Maybe humans were not so different from the animals they shared their planet with. Maybe that was why they had survived so long. Maybe that was why they had spread across the stars. Maybe that was why the Dominion was afraid of them. In Lily's arms, Sergeant made a small growling sound. He was hungry. Saving a ship full of humans was hard work. And he wanted a snack. I think Sergeant wants dinner, Lily said. I think Sergeant deserves whatever he wants, Captain Park said with a smile. The colonists laughed. It was the first laughter heard on the Endurance in days. And somehow, that small sound felt like a victory. The rescue ship was coming. Earth would learn what had happened. And the story of the honey badger who stood against the Dominion would spread across the galaxy. But for now, in this moment, there was only a little girl, her father, and a grumpy honey badger who wanted his dinner. That was enough. That was everything. The rescue ship arrived 18 hours after the Dominion fleet retreated. It was called the Hope of Earth, a massive vessel carrying supplies, medical teams, and enough weapons to fight off a small army. When it came out of hyperspace and found the Endurance still intact, the crew could hardly believe it. Captain James Anderson stood on the bridge of the Hope of Earth and stared at the colony ship floating in front of him. According to the reports, a Dominion fleet had surrounded this vessel less than a day ago. 12 warships. Hundreds of Wrath warriors. It should have been a massacre, but the Endurance was still here. Its people were still alive. And the Dominion was gone. This is Captain Anderson of the Hope of Earth, he said into the communication system. Endurance, please respond. What is your status? Captain Susan Park's voice came through the speakers. She sounded tired but calm. Hope of Earth, this is Captain Park of the Endurance. We are alive. All 2,000 colonists are unharmed. The Dominion retreated. Retreated? Captain Anderson could not believe what he was hearing. The Dominion does not retreat. What happened? There was a pause. Then Captain Park said something that Captain Anderson would remember for the rest of his life. A honey badger happened. The rescue operation took several hours. Medical teams examined the colonists. Engineers worked on the Endurance's damaged engines. Supplies were transferred between ships. Throughout it all, people kept asking the same question. What happened? Dr. David Kim told the story many times. Each time he told it, more people gathered to listen. By the time the ships were ready to leave, everyone on the Hope of Earth knew about Sergeant. They came to see him, of course. Soldiers and scientists, doctors and engineers. They all wanted to see the animal that had driven off a Dominion fleet. They expected something impressive, something fierce and powerful. What they found was a small gray and white creature sleeping in a little girl's lap. That's it. One soldier asked. He was a big man with scars on his face and medals on his chest. That's the thing that fought 8 Wrath warriors? That's him, David said. His name is Sergeant. The soldier walked closer and looked at the honey badger. Sergeant opened one eye, glanced at the soldier, then closed it again. The soldier was not interesting. The soldier was not a threat. Therefore, the soldier did not matter. "He looks so small," the soldier said. There was wonder in his voice. "He is small," David agreed. "But size does not matter to a honey badger. All that matters is what he is protecting." Lily looked up at the soldier with her big brown eyes. "Sergeant is my best friend," she said. "He keeps me safe." The soldier did not know what to say. He had fought in a dozen battles. He had killed enemies and watched friends die. He thought he understood courage. But looking at this small animal, this tiny creature that had stood against monsters without hesitation, he realized that courage came in many forms. Sometimes the bravest heart beat inside the smallest body. "You have a good friend," the soldier finally said to Lily. "Take care of him." "I will," Lily promised. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, the story of the honey badger spread across human space. News networks broadcast the video footage from the Wrath Warriors' helmet cameras. People watched in amazement as Sergeant attacked creatures 10 times his size. They watched him dodge plasma fire. They watched him refuse to give up, no matter how many enemies he faced. The video was viewed billions of times. Sergeant became the most famous animal in human history. But the story did not stop with humans. Throughout the galaxy, other species heard about what had happened. The slaves of the Dominion shared the story in secret, passing it from world to world like a precious gift. The honey badger became a symbol for all of them. A symbol of defiance. A symbol of hope. If one small creature could stand against the wrath, maybe others could too. The first rebellion began on a mining world in the Outer Rim. The Talani workers, inspired by the story of the honey badger, refused to continue working. When the Wrath Guards tried to force them, the Talani fought back. They were small and weak, just like the honey badger. But they were not afraid anymore. They won. More rebellions followed. The Dominion, which had seemed invincible for centuries, began to crack. Species that had been conquered and enslaved suddenly found their courage. They remembered that the Wrath could bleed. They remembered that the Wrath could run. They remembered the honey badger. Commander Thax watched his empire crumble from his flagship. He received reports of uprisings and battles, of worlds lost and warriors killed. And every time, the rebels used the same symbol. A small creature with fierce eyes and sharp claws. "This is your fault," his officers whispered behind his back. "You should have killed that animal. You should have destroyed that ship." Thax knew they were right. His moment of mercy, his decision to retreat, had set off a chain of events that would change the galaxy forever. The Dominion would survive, but it would never be the same. The fear was broken. The spell was lifted. All because of one honey badger on Earth. Lily and Sergeant lived happily in a small house near the ocean. David had taken a job at the local university, teaching xenobiology to students who always asked about the honey badger. Lily went to school and made friends and grew up like any other child. Sergeant grew old. Honey badgers do not live as long as humans. Their hearts beat too fast, burn too bright. By the time Lily was 15, Sergeant was gray and slow. He could not fight anymore. He could barely walk, but he still followed Lily everywhere. He still slept at the foot of her bed. He still growled at anyone who came too close to her. On the last day, Lily sat with Sergeant in the garden behind their house. The sun was warm. The ocean breeze carried the smell of salt and flowers. Sergeant lay in her lap, his eyes half closed, his breathing slow. "Thank you," Lily whispered to him. "Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for being my friend." Sergeant looked up at her. For just a moment, his eyes were bright again. Young again. Fierce again. He made a small sound, somewhere between a growl and a purr. Then he closed his eyes and was still. Lily held him for a long time. She cried until she had no tears left. Her father sat beside her and held her while she grieved. But even through the sadness, Lily felt something else, pride, gratitude, love. Sergeant had been a honey badger. He had done what honey badgers do. He had protected what was his. He had fought against impossible odds. He had never given up. And because of him, the universe was different, better, free. They buried Sergeant in the garden, under a tree that bloomed with white flowers every spring. A small stone marked the spot. It said, Sergeant Honey Badger War taught the galaxy that size does not matter in the HFY years past. Lily grew up and had children of her own. She told them stories about Sergeant. She showed them videos of his famous battle. She took them to visit his grave every year. And when her children asked what the most important lesson of the story was, Lily always gave the same answer. Never give up, she said. No matter how big the enemy, no matter how scary the fight, never give up. That is what Sergeant taught us. That is what honey badgers do. Her children listened and remembered. And when they grew up, they told their children. And their children told their children. The story of the honey badger who stood against the Dominion was passed down through generations. It became a legend, then a myth, then something almost like a religion. But at its heart, it was always the same simple truth. One small creature, one sleeping child, one moment of courage that changed everything. In the vast darkness of space, among the billions of stars and the countless worlds, the most dangerous thing was never the size of the fight. It was the size of the refusal to surrender. Sergeant knew that. He had always known it. And now, the whole galaxy knew it too. The end.